Welcome to Buffalo Pregame, your source for live Buffalo football discussion, news, analysis, opinions, and more. Presented by ASM Publications and Bills Digest.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Buffalo Pregame. I am your host, Alex Brasky, here for ASM Publications and Bills Digest. On today's show, we dive deep into the Bills preseason finale against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a rebound win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after the dismal effort against the Chicago Bears the week prior. The Bills put up a much more inspiring effort this week, and they come away with the victory. And the final score for those keeping track at home, 23-19, Buffalo wins over Tampa Bay, and plenty to discuss as a few positional battles appear decided, while others may come down to cutdown day on Tuesday afternoon. And thank you for joining me late night here, as got a few people rolling in. Don't expect a huge crowd at 12:18 a.m. Eastern on Sunday, as got a little bit of a late start to my post-game coverage. And like I said, very grateful for anyone joining us live here on Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook. So each week on Buffalo Pregame, that is, I will provide updates on the NFL, NHL, and more via daily articles, podcasts, videos, and more. Please subscribe to Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, along with Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky on Substack, both of which are free of charge. All right, let's get into it. The first and foremost update from this game came before the game on Buffalo Kickoff Live with Josh Reed and company on WIVB, and not very good news for Bills veteran cornerback Tre'Davious White. He sustained a injury earlier this week in practice and exited that practice with injury and didn't seem to travel with the team to Tampa Bay. It's now been deemed a lower leg injury by general manager Brandon Beane, speaking with Josh on Bills Kickoff Live, and he did indeed deem it that lower leg injury, but did not provide a timetable for White's return as of now. And it's a little bit dubious considering the fact that he left practice and the reports coming out of him limping around and then riding a cart back to the field house. So it doesn't appear to be good news for Tre'Davious White, as reporters caught up with Sean McDermott after the game against the Buccaneers, and he said that White underwent an MRI and the team is still awaiting results, and that's probably why they don't have the timetable as of now. But really anything beyond he's good or he's day-to-day or something of that nature was not going to be a good sign for Tre'Davious White. We all know the significant injuries that he's endured, in the past, with the ACL injury ending the 2021 season and the Achilles injury ending his 2023 season. So, I mean, at this stage of his career, Tre'Davious White trying to really jumpstart it with the Buffalo Bills and having another injury slow him down. If this is of significant nature, this could really be bad news for Tre'Davious White. And I don't want to, let's pump the brakes. I don't want to go all out and say this is terrible news for Trey White, but at the same time, the kind of lack of update from Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott before and after the game does not point in a great sign or in a great direction for Tre'Davious White, as Student Body Right chimes in here. Let's see what he has to say. A long comment here, flowing comment. If the refs aren't wearing shorts anymore and are sporting pants paired with Article 1 addressing ejection for throwing a punch, is Jordan Schultz's broadcast in an alternate universe calling for the league to be better? I'll hang up and listen. So I think Student Body Right agrees with the ejection of Shiloh Sanders for throwing the punch on Zach Davidson, Bills tight end, midway through this game. I thought it was a little bit of a light ejection, but then again, I'm not a slave of the rule book, as Student Body Right seems to be a student of the rule book. So we'll take his advice on that one. But back to the issue at hand, Tre'Davious White. You saw Dorian Strong and Dane Jackson get the start in this game, and you also saw some Jamarcus Ingram, and it seems to be those three kind of all still, I guess, battling for that top depth spot behind Tre'Davious White. You saw Dorian Strong kind of have an up and down training camp in his rookie year. Dane Jackson, you know what he's going to offer you at this stage of his career, his second go round with the Bills. And similar to Jamarcus Ingram, you saw him on the field last year and a bit limited as a player, but also came up with a few big plays for the Bills last year. So if White is out for an extended period of time, it will be interesting to see where they turn. Will it be Strong? Will it be Jackson? Will it be Ingram as the next man up in that circumstance opposite Christian Benford? Dane Jackson shared the team lead in tackles on Saturday night despite exiting briefly with an injury. So really uncertain there, to tell you the truth, as far as who's going to be next man up from Tre'Davious White. You have rookie cornerback Maxwell Hairston, who Brandon Beane said before the game that the team is uncertain at this point if he'll be placed on the 53-man roster or perhaps short-term injured reserve, which is still a possibility at this point. So if you're down White, you're already down Hairston. If you're down those two cornerbacks that you expected to win, one of which that is expected to win the starting job coming out of training camp, you're really putting yourself at a significant disadvantage going up against the Super Bowl contender in the Baltimore Ravens week 1. And then you have Miami coming down the pike as well early in the season. So a lot of questions left to be answered at the cornerback position. And we really await word on Tre'Davious White, and that will kind of trigger the dominoes, as they say, at that position. Dane Jackson could realistically not make the team, or if Tre'Davious White is hurt, he could be in the starting lineup. So a lot of variance when it comes to projections at the cornerback position, dependent upon Tre'Davious White's injury and, of course, what the team decides to do with Max Hairston, whether to place him on short-term IR or to get him on the 53-man roster to begin the season. John Robert commenting, the Bills signed 2 new cornerbacks for tonight, and it was a much better game performed by the Bills here this evening. They seem to really bring a lot more energy both on the sideline and on the field, and you expect that out of a Sean McDermott coach team coming off that embarrassing effort against the Chicago Bears. And not to say the final score really makes a difference, but I think seeing players like Strong, Jackson, Ingram still competing for jobs, and to see what Shane Buechele, who we'll get to later, did tonight, I think that was important to really put the finishing touches on some of these positional battles, which I thought Cole Bishop did tonight at safety. It's been a roller coaster following Cole Bishop's career thus far, just a year and some change into that career. But it's been a journey for him in terms of injuries sustained during both preseasons, his rookie year and now his second year with the quad injury, which kept him out for significant time and really held him back in terms of his race to lock down his role as a starter opposite Taylor Rapp at the back end of the Bills' defensive secondary. But Cole Bishop played extremely well, I thought, in the limited time that he was on the field against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Played 2 defensive series. He had the big pass breakup to force a punt on the Bucs' second possession. Really what I saw from Bishop was confidence, playing aggressive. He seemed tentative at times in the past, and I think that's been due to maybe, as Sean McDermott has pointed to, that lack of experience with both the playbook and on the field. But things were clicking for him on Saturday, and he seemed to be processing things very, very quickly and reading and reacting the way that you like to see a player with Cole Bishop's skill set. He's like a heat-seeking missile back there, and you saw it on that third down play. And once and for all, I've gone back and forth on this. I've hemmed and hawed a little bit, but once and for all, I'm going to plant my flag, and I don't think this is a bold prediction or anything, but I'm going to say that I think Cole Bishop has now done enough to lock down that starting safety role, and I think you'll see that as much reflected come week 1 against the Ravens, and really leading in to that week 1 against the Ravens. But I'm not sure that was ever really truly in doubt with Cole Bishop. Like I said, I brought up the chances of DeMar Hamlin perhaps winning that job, and I'm not so sure how realistic those were in the Bills' eyes. Those thoughts of mine, that is, certainly realistic in my mind, but I'm not so sure that the Bills ever came close to Bishop surrendering that job despite the quad injury. But I think he proved something in a short stint on Saturday, and now has shown enough to earn that starting role at safety. Availability is always going to be a concern for Cole Bishop, and you do have DeMar Hamlin waiting in the wings, but you saw some of his limitations throughout the preseason and kind of some of the red flags that fans have been bringing up the past several years, maybe just the past year and a half with Hamlin being the starter last year. But this season could be quite a ride with Cole Bishop. There could be a lot of ups and downs. The roller coaster ride could continue, but I think in the long run, if Bishop is to stay healthy, he's obviously the best option that the Bills have opposite Taylor Rapp. I think he's only going to get better as his career progresses, and you saw kind of him take a step tonight, like I said, albeit in a very, very short stint on the field, only 2 defensive series, and it's kind of the ebbs and flows of a young player's career. You saw it last week, a little bit of turbulence with him getting beat for the touchdown, although Brandon Beane tried to play that down during his appearance on Bills Kickoff Live. And then today you saw him really come up and make a nice play to deny a reception on a 3rd down. So there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be ebbs and flows. And what you saw from Bishop tonight, I think really gives you hope that he can lock down that position and become what you want the 2nd-round pick to be early in his career. And John Robert, thank you for reminding me. Everyone, please like and share this stream on YouTube, also X if you're watching there. But please go to YouTube, open up the YouTube app, search Buffalo Pregame, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We'll be coming out with more podcasts, fast and furious, with the regular season upcoming. Slowed down over the past week. Not much to talk about going in to the 3rd preseason game with not much to decide on a Super Bowl contending team such as the Bills. But we're going to be bringing these to you fast and furious. Please subscribe to the channel and also hit that like button on X, Facebook, and YouTube. It's 10, 12 minutes in to this podcast, and we have yet to mention the star of tonight's ball game, and that is, of course, Tyrell Shavers, who seems to have locked down his roster spot at the wide receiver position. I mean, if he hasn't, it's like Joe Marino of the Locked On Bills podcast tweeted out during tonight's game. If he hasn't done enough to lock down that position, I mean, what more does a guy have to do? Just a miraculous touchdown catch thrown from Shane Buechele in the first half of this game against the Buccaneers. It was initially ruled an incompletion, but a quick review deemed it a successful catch and thus a touchdown for Tyrell Shavers. And he had a defender draped all over him, used one hand to haul in the highlight reel catch. And it was really the highlight of the night for either team and the highlight of the preseason for the Bills. Just a miraculous, as I said, touchdown catch for Tyrell Shavers, who has also added special teams to his repertoire. You saw after that touchdown catch, he came up with nice kick coverage on the ensuing kickoff. So I think you got to throw him out there on all different types of roles on special teams and really allow him to grow in that respect. But in terms of his receiving ability, he's one of the Bills' top 5, top 6 at worst receivers. So I think he's really he's made his case for this roster. And I think he's going to crack the final 53 or the initial 53-man roster here coming out of training camp in the preseason. You have Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Joshua Palmer pretty much decided as the team's top 3 receivers. But beyond that, you have Curtis Samuel, you have Elijah Moore, and you have Tyrell Shavers and also KJ Hamler, who have been competing for those final spots. And at the beginning of training camp, I projected the Bills to keep 6 wide receivers out of training camp. It's just I projected the wrong one. I thought Jalen Virgil, based on what I saw from him during the team's offseason program, that he might elevate his status as a special teams contributor and a wide receiver. But instead, it's been Shavers week after week after week just producing. And what he did today was show everybody what he's capable of. And I think it's going to be difficult to keep a player like that on your practice squad year after year, especially when you're putting highlight reel plays on display like he did tonight. When you put plays like that on tape, that gets other teams' antennas starting to rise up here. So I like Tyrell Shavers' chances to make the initial 53-man roster. And then, like I said, it's really up to Curtis Samuel, Elijah Moore, and perhaps KJ Hamler to sort out the final 1 or 2 roster spots. Will the team keep 5? Will the team keep 6? Is there a chance that they'll keep 7? I highly doubt it. But I think 6 is in play here, and I think where it lands is Shakir, Coleman, Palmer, Samuel, Shavers, and Elijah Moore. And I think it could come down potentially to Moore versus Hamler. You've seen Hamler do a lot more than Moore, and they have somewhat of a similar skill set. One standing 5'8", one standing 5'9", both diminutive in stature and really gadget-type receivers who can also get open quickly for you. So I think Hamler has really been throwing his hat into the ring in terms of this fight at wide receiver. And like I said, he's done more from my perspective than Elijah Moore, no pun intended. But at the same time, I think the Bills might be inclined to allow that to play out with Elijah Moore as Josh Allen gets in there under center. So, and I think there's probably a greater chance that you could have Hamler be satisfied with potential practice squad position more so than Elijah Moore. So I think at the end of the day, you'll see Shakir, Coleman, Palmer, Samuel, Shavers, Moore, 6 wide receivers for the Bills. Laviska Shenault also was in the conversation at wide receiver throughout training camp and the preseason, but today, or yesterday, I should say, against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, didn't really help his cause, struggled with contain on kickoff, I thought, after the Bills' first touchdown, and then Brandon Codrington got the first opportunity at kick returner, and that likely points to the Bills favoring Codrington over Shenault in terms of punt return, kick return opportunities, and both of them got their opportunities on Saturday night. And I think Shenault ended up with a better average on 2 returns opposed to Codrington's 3 returns on kick, and Codrington was the only one to get a punt return. But I give the edge to Codrington over Shenault here, and I don't think Shenault is even in the conversation to be one of the top 6 wide receivers for the Bills. So that makes matters even more difficult in terms of his path to the final, or I keep saying final. There really is the initial 53-man roster. But elsewhere on special teams, Tyler Bass, it was his first time kicking during the preseason. He went 3 for 4, right? 3 for 4? Yeah, 3 for 4. Made 2 from 37, 1 from 39, missed from 26, which is a little bit concerning. And Tampa Bay after the rain, dry field. But he looked healthy, and he and Brad Robbins had a chance to work together. Robbins didn't punt in this one. He had an illness / the Bills wanted to have a little bit of fun allowing Zach Davidson, who punted in high school. He got the call as the team's punter on Saturday. So you've now seen Ray Davis serve as the team's kicker on an extra point or 2, or I can't remember how many it was. And Zach Davidson now the team's punter for a full game, just 2 punts, one a bomb, 62 yards to lead things off. And then his second one went 42 yards. So he seems set for the practice squad, but hey, it always benefits guys. Hey, the more you can do, and it also gave the Bills another thing to rally about on the sideline today. So that was good to see from Davidson, getting some punts off and really making an impact because he hasn't been able to elsewhere in terms of his pass catching ability or anywhere else. We'll shift over to the defensive side of the ball as Deion Walker continues to make plays. The rookie defensive tackle bounced back after what Sean McDermott termed a rough performance against the Chicago Bears. Well, maybe he didn't say that verbatim. I think rough might be my word. But to paraphrase what Sean McDermott said, he alluded to Deion Walker wanting to improve upon his performance against Chicago with a better and more productive effort against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And he was able to do just that. He combined for a sack with A.J. Epinesa. He also had a tackle for loss in this game, 4 total tackles, I think, for Deion Walker. And he was just throwing defenders aside, particularly on the tackle for loss. He has size and strength that goes unmatched really along many defensive lines, but clearly the Bills' defensive line. And what he's shown early in his career is that vaunted status that he earned before the back injury really hampered his final collegiate season. He was projected as a first, second round pick, and then really kind of fell down the ladder after sustaining that injury in his final season. So he's really been ramping things up quickly. He didn't have to undergo much maintenance in terms of days off during the offseason program or training camp. He's been out there consistently, and he's been consistently productive and showing flashes with splash plays, which is something that a big, massive human being like that with impressive traits, that's what you expect from a player like Deion Walker. Big, splashy plays, and that's what you've seen from the big man inside on the Bills defensive line. And he and fellow rookie TJ Sanders, they're going to factor in immediately with that Larry Ogunjobi suspension. Things might change in terms of the look of the defensive line once Ogunjobi comes back. But for those first 6 games, you're going to need these 2 rookies, and the Bills have been giving them plenty of reps during the preseason to get them up to speed. You've heard much more from Deion Walker, TJ Sanders, than a second-year player in Dwayne Carter, who I don't know how safe his roster spot is once Larry Ogunjobi comes back. I think things could swing one way or the other here for Dwayne Walker. He's going to be given opportunity with Ogunjobi's suspension. He's likely going to be kept around on the 53-man roster, but whether or not he's able to get out there and really make an impact could open the door for the Bills to part ways with him upon Ogunjobi returning from that 6-game PED suspension. Carter gets a little bit of extra runway here due to that suspension, but another 6 weeks to make an impact. And we'll see if time runs short on Dwayne Carter as time goes along here. But back to the offensive side of the ball, we'll conclude here with Shane Buechele's big day. As Josh Allen, the first time in his career, he does not play in the preseason. And we'll see how that impacts things to begin the year. I am not necessarily a huge proponent of a lot of preseason playing time, but I think with all the injuries the Bills have sustained throughout training camp, it would have been a nice way to kind of right the ship and settle in going into the regular season if Josh Allen and the team starters were able to get a series or 2 together during the team's 3-game exhibition slate. But you see starters of other teams around the league, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, playing during the preseason. You see other teams not playing their starters during the preseason. So I think you've seen mixed results. I'm not sure there's any correlation. I just think as a peace of mind type of guy, I would have liked to see a little bit of Josh Allen in the starters during the preseason. But I don't think it's necessarily anything that if they do struggle out of the gate, maybe you point to it. But otherwise, I think it's just well forgotten about come week 1. But Shane Buechele got the start, had the game of his life, finished 25 of 30 passing, 278, and a highlight reel touchdown for Tyrell Shavers. He also had the near touchdown to KJ Hamler, who was stopped at the 1-yard line. It appears with Buechele playing the full game in this one that the quarterback 2 battle, quote unquote, is likely decided. My guess is that Mitch Trubisky has won that battle with Mike White here during the preseason. White didn't really do anything to win the job, and I think that's what he was going to have to do to take care of Trubisky in that positional battle. But after his season ended due to a neck injury last year, it was nice to see Shane Buechele bounce back with a nice performance in this one. And Sean McDermott spoke highly of him. He got his time at the podium today after the game. That was nice to see. But him playing the whole game, I think, really points to a decision has been made on QB2. It's likely going to be Mitch Trubisky. We'll see if Mike White comes around in the practice squad. If they keep 2 quarterbacks on the practice squad, which I wouldn't think that they would. I would think that Shane Buechele would be your practice squad quarterback. I think Mike White might have to look for another opportunity here. But then again, I could be wrong there. I just think with Buechele's position within this locker room, and also I think he's just the perfect candidate to be your practice squad quarterback. I think Mike White is kind of a borderline backup, and Buechele might have a little ways to go in that regard. So I think Buechele is perfect in that role, but we'll see if White does indeed stick around for the Bills on the practice squad. A few others on the roster bubble. Cutdown day coming up on Tuesday. Might have another episode for you before that. Frank Gore Jr. had a great preseason, capped with pretty good game in this one. Didn't have a great yards per carry average. I think 10 carries, 35 yards, something like that. Also had a touchdown, however. I think the Bills are confident in Frank Gore, and it was a good point pointed out by WGR's Nate Geary. I think if they have to plug and play Frank Gore Jr. at any time with injuries to James Cook, Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, I think they're comfortable with Gore Jr. Fitting in on a short-term basis. He's been impressive in each preseason game, and I don't think this offense would really miss too much of a beat if you had to plug him in for one of those guys on a game-to-game basis. And also on the offensive side of the ball, Christian Wilkerson has looked really, really good. Led the Bills in receiving on Saturday, 5 receptions, 46 yards. I think the Bills will also hope to get him back on the practice squad, a little bit of a veteran presence on that practice squad, and somebody with raw receiving ability, and somebody who I think could come in and potentially give you a big game if you desperately need him to down the road here. Chase Lunt, the rookie offensive lineman, got the start at left tackle. He's played both guard and tackle throughout the preseason. He has played right tackle today, left tackle, also on the inside. So a lot of versatility there. I think he's trending toward making the roster, but then again, we'll see on Tuesday afternoon, the deadline being 4 p.m. On defense, Jimmy Charlo at linebacker in before second-year linebacker Edefon Ulofoshio. That does not bode well for Ulofoshio's chances of making the roster in his second season. He's just done nothing over the course of 2 years, and it's tough for a player in his position to really shine. But then again, you see Charlo come in here off the free agent pile and immediately make an impact. Made a tackle at the goal line today. He's made plays on special teams. He was a star on Hard Knocks. So I think the former Army captain is above Edefon Ulofoshio at this time in terms of the linebacker hierarchy, for lack of a better term. So I think Ulofoshio is going to have trouble making this team, might be a practice squad candidate. And then another player on the roster bubble, you saw the Bills like him to start his career last year, Daquan Hardy, a tough night at nickel cornerback. I think he was beaten for a couple of touchdowns, one by Tez Johnson, and then later in the game, I think he was beaten by a Bucs tight end. So not a great night for Daquan Hardy, kind of thrust into a tough spot with the injuries that the Bills have sustained at the cornerback position. But that's about it for updates from this one. And like I said before, please like, share, subscribe to Buffalo Pregame. Go to YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, like wherever you're watching right now. If it is on X, if it is on Facebook, hit that like button. Spread the news, tell your friends. We'll be back each week, several podcasts. You can also follow my Substack page for free, Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky on Substack. We're bringing you daily updates from the Bills throughout the season. So that's going to do it. Last preseason edition. The next edition will be centered around cutdown day and then leading in to week 1, of course, against the Baltimore Ravens. But this has been a late night episode. Appreciate the crowd that has joined in tonight and watched. And like I said, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time.